so the last cycle we're going to talk about is the phosphorus cycle. Now this one is going to be super short. There's not a lot of writing for this one. We're going to highlight most of the information. But there are a couple things that we want to make note of when we talk about the phosphorus cycle. Alright, so phosphorus is not something that you find in the air. It's not something that you necessarily have to consume a lot of to get into your system. The major source of phosphorus are going to be rocks and sediments. Alright? So the major reservoir of phosphorus are rocks and sediments. Okay? Now, this right here, I'm going to put a star next to this statement we're about to write down because this is always asked on the AP test, and this will definitely be asked on the test for Unit 3. This is the way the phosphorus cycle differs from every other cycle. There is no atmospheric component of the phosphorus cycle. No atmospheric component. It is not in the air at all. It is solely in the earth. Okay? Now, because it is solely in the earth, it causes phosphorus to be scarce. I'm going to scoot this down a little bit, okay? Because we're going to write this at the bottom. It is scarce, meaning that if we want to have great plant growth, we know that we need nitrogen. Well, guess what? We also need phosphorus. And because phosphorus is scarce in the environment, because it's in a solid form like rocks, farmers have to add it through fertilizer. So it's supplemented into the earth. Okay? So this causes phosphorus to be naturally scarce, meaning there's just not a lot of it. So farmers supplement with fertilizers. And you're going to see in the next set of notes why excess use of fertilizers is very bad for the environment. Alright, so I'm going to go back up here. Now for this I'm going to get the highlighting tool because this is already written down for us, so we don't need to write it down again. So I'm going to highlight it, I'm going to talk about it. So while I'm talking about it, feel free to make some of your own notes on the side, okay? Alright, so we're just going to go in order. So we know that phosphorus is stored in rocks, okay? So rocks have to be weathered. They have to be broken down by wind or water to release that phosphorus into the environment. So the weathering of uplifted rocks contributes phosphates to the land, okay? So that is where the natural source is. It comes from the weathering of rocks. It's not a lot, but that's where it comes from. Alright? So that will go into the soil. Now, another way that phosphorus is input into the environment is fertilizer. So phosphate fertilizer runs off directly into streams. Okay? Because we know that when you put fertilizer onto plants, they're not going to absorb 100% of it. Most of it actually runs off into water sources. Okay? Now, from this point, we see that we're going to have animal life impact this a little bit. So the excretion by animals, excretion means poop and pee, okay? Excretion by animals and decomposition of both animals and plants release phosphates into the water. Alright, so when animal and plants die, that phosphorus will be sent back into the water, okay? And from that point, it's going to be used by something else. So, when this phosphorus gets into the water, it contributes to ocean sediments. All right? And the conversion of the sediments into rock is a very slow process. So this phosphorus goes into the ocean, becomes a sediment, it converts into a phosphate rock, which is going to take, millions of years, okay? Now lastly, when we have the rocks down here, geologic forces are going to lift up the rocks to create mountains. All right, geologic forces lift up phosphate rocks from the ocean floor to create mountains. Now, we haven't talked about specifically how mountains are formed, but just understand at this point that they're going to get pushed up through geologic activity, and they're going to become mountains. Okay? So that's it for the phosphorus cycle, guys. This is pretty easy. Remember that there is no atmospheric component, and the addition of fertilizer by farmers is because it's naturally scarce. Now, what is the human impact on the phosphorus cycle? There's only one. Is going to be the addition of fertilizers. And we're going to see next why this is so bad for the environment.